A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decide by what he hears with his ears. But with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, and their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. In that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you very much, Sally. I'll rearrange the furniture again. And if you did get an envelope, this is where you're going to need to find your 3 baubles in your envelope and dig those out. Because we need to decorate the Christmas tree. That's what you do with a Christmas tree. And I wonder if you spotted why I chose a Christmas tree this morning as our visual aid. Look how those verses begin. We're told that there's a shoot growing up out of a tree stump that becomes a great big branch that bears fruit. You see, we're rewinding 700 years before Jesus, where God's people felt like life for them had just been cut down. Life for them had been uprooted. Instead of looking like an impressive tree, they looked like a dead tree stump. And Isaiah gets us and he says, look at the green shoots that's going to become a big branch. It's going to become a big tree. It's a bit like in a few months' time when we're walking down the road and you look at the tree and you see the green on the tree. It promises spring. Or when you look at the ground and you see some green bits poking through that promise spring flowers. It's a promise of life, brighter days, better days. And Isaiah uses a picture of a tree, but he's actually talking about a person, a future king, a king whose birth we're going to celebrate in 20 days' time. It's Jesus. And this morning I want to see 3 brilliant things from Isaiah 11 about Jesus. And this is where you're going to need your 3 baubles, children, one for each of those brilliant things. As I'm describing what Jesus is like, you can write something, you can draw something. I've done some, so I can give you a few ideas as we go along. The first brilliant thing about Jesus from Isaiah 11 is that Jesus has the Holy Spirit. He has the Spirit of God rest on him, we're told. Now, it took me a while to think of something to draw on my bauble. How do you draw that? How do you draw the Spirit of God on someone? But then I remembered there's a story of when Jesus was baptized. And there's a voice from heaven. And then what happens? Anyone remember? The Holy Spirit descends on Jesus like a dove. So, I draw on my bauble to help me remind me of why Jesus is brilliant, that he has the Holy Spirit. I drew a dove. So I'm going to hang that on the Christmas tree. So you might want to draw a dove. You might want to write Spirit. You might want to do something totally different. That's fine. And what does it mean? What does it mean that Jesus has the Spirit of God? Well, it means Jesus always knows what's going on. He knows exactly what's going on in your life and in your hearts, in my life and in my heart. It means Jesus always knows the right thing to do. And then he has the power to go and do it. I don't know about you, but I often don't know the right thing to do. And even if I do, I sometimes struggle to be able to do it. And we're told the Spirit of God meant that he had a perfect relationship, a perfect connection with God, and he lived it out. And it's why we read Jesus say in John 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. There's a perfect connection with the Father. In fact, so perfect that if we want to know what God's like, we go to Jesus. Jesus is brilliant. He has the Holy Spirit, and it means, my other decoration for this one is Jesus has, I can't turn it round. He has no question marks. He has no question marks in his head. He knows what's going on. He knows what to do, and he perfectly knows God. So that's the first brilliant thing about Jesus. The second brilliant thing about Jesus that we see in Isaiah 11 is that he is a perfect judge. Now, I scratched my head again. How do you draw that? Maybe you could do a wig, like you see on the telly, judges. They have a funny wig on their head, don't they? Or the wooden hammer, the gavel, they sort of whack down. But in the end, I looked at verse 5 of our passage, and it says what he will be wearing. It says, righteousness will be his belt. So I drew a belt, and I wrote righteousness on it. So that was my one. But you could come up with something else. So that reminds us, a second brilliant thing about Jesus, is he judges perfectly. That's the promise. He judges righteously. He will judge rightly. Jesus judges things perfectly. This is good news. And it's particularly good news for those who've been hurt the most, those who are needy, those who are poor. Now, I'm sure if you've been tracking the news over the last few days, you, like me, will have just had that horrible feeling, that kind of sickening feeling at the story of Arthur Labine Hughes. It's a terrible story. And everything within us goes, that's not right. It shouldn't happen, and we want there to be justice. We cry out for it. The thing with Jesus is there's a promise that there's justice even better than any police, any court, any prison can do. See, when Jesus returns, he will make everything to be seen for what it is. And he will deal with everything perfectly. And it means when Jesus comes back, do you know there's a phrase that nobody will ever say again? It's a phrase that just occasionally comes out in our house. And grown-ups probably don't say the phrase, but they think it. It's not fair. Because Jesus is a perfect judge. There will be a time when none of us ever will say, that's not fair. So to help us remind us of the second brilliant thing about Jesus that we see in Isaiah 11, my Bible says it's not fair and it's been crossed out. There's plenty of things that are unfair now, aren't there? Plenty of things. But when Jesus returns, there will be no more. Jesus sees right into the heart of the matter, and he sees right into our hearts. And do you know what? I might not have done anything that lands me in prison, but I know I've done wrong things. I know I've hurt people. And this is why Jesus coming twice is such good news. It's why I love Advent, because Advent leads us into Christmas, a reminder that Jesus has come to save us, to be born, to be like us, to live a life perfectly, but then to die on the cross for me and for my sin. And yet Advent also tells us that Jesus is going to come back and he's going to deal with everything and he's going to make everything right. And I don't need to worry or fear about it because Jesus has dealt with everything that I've done wrong for me. Advent reminds us of Jesus coming back to make everything right. And that's the third brilliant thing from Isaiah 11 about Jesus. Jesus is going to make everything right. Now, you might want to be onto your third bauble now. Just imagine that I'm going to give you all tomorrow off. Sound good? Should we make it even better? Let's have a trip to the zoo. Who would like to go to the zoo with me? Oh, don't seem too keen. Do I take that personally or that you don't like zoos? Don't know. Let's go. Is it Twycross Zoo? Is probably the closest one, isn't it, to here? We go to Twycross Zoo, and I'm feeling empowered because you've all come with me, and I'm like, I think we can make Twycross Zoo even better. I know what we'll do. will open all the gates to all the areas where the different animals live so they can have some time together, they can have some fun together, they can play together. A good idea? No, it's going to be carnage. It's going to be chaos. The big things will squash the small things, and the scary things will eat the less scary things. It's called wildlife for a reason. Imagine if that did happen. You're going to watch parents grabbing their children and running away as fast as possible, aren't you? But that's not what we see in Isaiah 11, is it? Have a look at the end of verse 6. We're told that leading the wolf, the lamb, the leopard, the goat, the calf, the lion, and the yearling is a little child. Isn't that astonishing? What a picture. And then that child is going to stick their hand into a snake's nest. I hate snakes. I don't want anyone putting their hands in there. But yet, at this time, the only screams that will be heard are screams of delight. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine it? It feels a bit like one of those Christmas traditions. It's brilliant, isn't it? But it seems a bit bonkers. We can barely imagine what it'll be like when Jesus makes everything right. So for my bauble for this one, very unimaginatively, I've just put a big tick. Everything made right. And then just to help us kind of get a bit of a picture of what that is like. You know, we're not going to be floating around heaven. It's a new world. It's a remade world. It's got everything that's good now and then some more. So I drew the world. Please don't look very closely at my map on the bauble. I do have a geography degree. I don't remember much of it. But it's a wonderful picture. The world made right. Nothing will harm, we're told. Nothing will destroy. Why? Because everything and everyone is in perfect relationship with God the Creator. Have a look at what it says at the end of verse 9. Why does this all happen? It says, "For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." Three brilliant things about Jesus. He's filled with the Holy Spirit. He judges perfectly. And he makes all things right.